Part 2, I'm going to talk about samples by waterway, a few measures of data quality, some of the priority waterways based on my evaluation, and then some of the data applications and some personal action items, so we can all take some things home that we can do as well. So I won't go into great detail in terms of waterways sampled, but you can see, as Mike went through a lot of these, and just some notation points, for example, Lee Creek tributaries, where we have a +1 there, that means we're up one sample site from 2013. So we gained a sample site. So for example, Miami Whitewater Lake, it's got a -1, that means we haven't, in 2012, so we haven't sampled there since 2012. Just some clarification on the notation. So we've gained some sites. We've gained more sites than we've lost overall. Now we have some very enthusiastic chemists and samplers in the group, but I also have to say we have a few philosophers as well. And this year we've discovered that there is actually an I in team. It's right there. However, I don't know who found it. We actually have some of the excellent teams in our lab that really do a good job to help us work towards quality efforts. So, in spite of my commentary here, these guys do a great job making things efficient in the E. coli analysis, and a well-run team, and I think Jenny should be in that picture too there. So now I'm going to talk about the quality of data, so that's a good lead-in. So we look at, and this is something that a lot of groups such as ours don't really do, to my knowledge. But we're looking at the quality of data. What we try to do is run 10% of our samples in duplicate, where we split that sample, run it through all the tests, and then also our field duplicates. We try to run 10%, and we're almost there. We need a few more field duplicate samplers this year. And you can see our tests like conductivity and pH, which is basically sticking a probe in the sample, that our replicability is really good. Our spectrophotometry methods, it's a little more challenging to get replicability, and in fact there's in these cases 5% error range with the equipment we're using in some cases. So and also this is looking at median relative % difference in duplicates, and what we're seeing too is that at low levels, a lot of the variability is occurring at low levels in terms of % differences. So, for example, a 0.01 difference in phosphorus, or 0.02 at very low levels, is much different than at a 1 milligram per liter duplicate. So that's some of what we're seeing. But just so you know that we're looking at this, and it's of interest, especially where we're using the data to try to keep improving in our quality measures. And I think some of our equipment purchases recently are helping us to do this. So I'm going to go to quality to now perhaps lack of quality. How many of you think that one waterway could rank as the worst waterway for the last couple of years? How about the last 3 years? I see Mr. Kaler raising his hand, and there's a good reason for that. Essentially, you see the Taylor Creek here, and this is Taylor Creek tributary at Snyder Road. And Bruce knows how to pick him. I think he's being strategic here. But this tributary has ranked as the worst the last 3 years, and this is
that site was recommended to me a few years ago by Chris Griffith, Hamilton County Public Health. They spotted years ago that it was a bad place.
Okay, so Chris and Bruce get credit. But this is a priority rank that I've done that's more heavily weighted in nutrients than Mike's, so you can kind of see the variation. But again, you see the Taylor Creek trib ranked the worst the last few years. And you can see the green lines are where the river systems ranked. Again, to some of Mike's comments, the pea soup on the Great Miami River, it's ranking as higher priority. Basically, the sites up here as high priority are worse in terms of these parameter rankings, and the Whitewater River, and followed by the Ohio River, which is Lisa's samples. So I also, just for the heck of it, this year threw the Mill Creek samples in the mix, and so you can see how they kind of would rank up against the Great Miami. Not surprisingly, the East Fork, which drains the Butler Regional Wastewater Plant, aside from our Taylor Creek trib, would be it's the second in the priority rank there. And the Mill Creek is actually the upper Mill Creek, so it doesn't include lower Mill Creek samples. So just keep that in mind. But there are a few Great Miami trib sites that are ahead of it there. So in terms of discharge, this past June, I looked at discharge from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. basically when we're gathering most of our samples, and over 18,000 on June of this year. That was our high over the last 5 years, just in terms of our sample dates, not necessarily the high overall, but this is strictly our sample, the morning of our sampling. And April of 2013 was our second highest, and then April of 2011 our third highest. So just kind of keep these in mind when you're looking at the data trends. And you can also see that 2012, look at that flow, very low flow on our sample dates. So again, something to keep in mind in looking at the data. Then we have just some of the numbers, and Mike talked about some of these, but I kind of arrange them by rivers and tributaries. Of course, one of the things that stood out, this is the last 4 years, 2011 to 2014, and what stood out is the you see increased average turbidity in our river systems, and if we look at just the averages in turbidity on our rivers, we wouldn't be meeting that 25 NTU standard. And then phosphorus loading also was increased with presumably sediment there. As we go to, I guess the other thing was on the tributaries, the higher conductivity. So that was sort of a jump there. And then the Great Miami compared to the Whitewater River system. Again, looking at turbidity, its highest turbidity this year on the Great Miami River, as Mike was pointing out, with some of the algal activity, and then with the discharge, some of the higher discharge, some of those months washed a lot of sediment through the system. And then Whitewater River also had among the highest turbidity over the last 4 years. So looking at the averages, the Great Miami and the Whitewater, again, would not meet the 25 NTU standard. If we go to the medians, then the Great Miami would be the only one out of compliance in 2013. And then, higher phosphorus, associated with the turbidity there. And so that, we're up 3 to 5 times the acceptable levels for phosphorus based on warm water habitat. And then, as Mike was pointing out with the geometric means, again, for those of you who like to get in the river or canoe, kayak, there was fairly good news this year as far as the overall geometric mean. And looking at what happens as far as discharge and geometric mean for E. coli. The bars represent the discharge on the Great Miami, which Mike showed. If you look at the blue boxes, these indicate E. coli on those dates. So you can see that there is, in general, a trend of increasing E. coli levels. You can see we're up around 1,400 in our big flow event in June. And so this is a Great Miami Whitewater River. and then Ohio River, all above, you know, the recreational standards when there's a significant discharge. So, but basically after our June sampling, you can see that we're under 126 colonies per 100 ml for the Great Miami and the other river systems for the rest of the year. So, so that looked good from, you know, June on. And the E. coli measurements were taken looking at all of our sample sites on each river system. So, okay, so and back to the priority ranking here. Now, one of the things that I did just to pull a few sites out of the mix is I looked at where there was the greatest priority change, increase in priority, which would mean that they're getting a little worse from, you know, 2012 to 2014. And the biggest movers were Lee Creek. You can see it was 33rd in priority in 2012 and at 11th, you know, this year. And then also the Dry Fork of the Whitewater River went from 37th to 17th, and in terms of priority rank. So moving up in priority, presumably worse in you know, water quality over that time frame. And interestingly, they moved nearly identical levels in priority over the 3-year period. And again, this is more weighted on nutrients. And then the biggest mover in the positive direction was Fox Run down here. You can see it was 20th in priority and now moved to 44th. And I think that's the one Mike said was in the blue range, or one. So the comeback waterway of the year, we're going to call Fox Run. So not a hand for Fox Run. Does anybody here sample Fox Run?
Yeah, we do.
Ah, okay. Good job, you guys. So Sand Run is, you know, comes into the south, and then followed by Fox Run going into the Whitewater River there. So Fox Run, and Mike showed the stats in terms of the forested watershed, but you can see that this was looking at the June 21st turbidity, or pretty much our highest turbidity flow and turbidity event of the year. And Fox Run had a turbidity of 52 NTU, so that's looking like this. You know, it's fairly high, but we had tremendous flow. But while Fox Run was looking like this, the Great Miami was looking 4 times more darker than that. It was around close to 1,000 at the US 50 bridge. So and that's quite a difference there. So, and in comparison to some of the tributaries, we'll look at some of the trib numbers in a little bit here, but it's about 8 times less turbid than a lot of the tributaries even. So it's an argument for good forest cover in our watersheds. And then going to the highest priority sites, or the highest movers in terms of priority, Lee Creek. Lee Creek comes in from Butler County, runs through northwestern Hamilton County on its way to the Dry Fork of the Whitewater River, and then also keep an eye on this is a tributary just to the north, or the east of Lee Creek. It's a Dry Fork trib, and then here's the southwest Lee Creek trib. We're sampling all of these. And this is an area, just for the future, we're going to be talking about, we're working with some farmers in this area, in part due to the data that we're finding. Okay, so why did Lee Creek change from 2012 to 2014 in terms of the rankings here? You know, high pH associated with algal respiration, we think. Or higher pH, and then turbidity jumped from the average from 9.8 to 31.7, and June value of 273. So compared to Fox Run, which was 52, it's quite a jump there. So a lot of erosion occurring in the Lee Creek watershed, and the erosion is bringing in phosphorus, attached phosphorus with the sediment. You can see high sediment, or phosphorus jumped up 3 times the value from 2012. So it's up to 0.3 milligrams per liter, and even some spikes in E. coli in the Lee Creek watershed.